Good evening. I would like to call to order the City of West Bend Plan Commission meeting for April 7th. Before we rise for our pledge, I know everybody's getting ready. I do want to acknowledge that we have a nice full house in the audience, so thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. We don't get to see this too often, but when we see citizens engaged, it's really exciting to see. So thank you all for coming out. We look forward to hearing your comments later on. So let's please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And with that, we'll begin with item number 3, approval of the minutes, Plan Commission regular meeting minutes for March 2nd.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second. Any comments or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor, so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And we'll move to 4, Development Proposals B, 2020 Comprehensive Plan, and number 1, discussion and public hearing at 6 o'clock p.m. meeting for a change in the recommended land use from single-family residential to two-family residential in the 2020 Comprehensive Plan for the City of West Bend for approximately 32.9 acres of land located on the north and east of Daisy Drive and Clearview Drive by the Department of Development. The applicant is the City of West Bend's Department of Development, and the agent is the same. We're going to begin by a presentation from our Business and Development Planner, Jim Reinke. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone. So back in March of this year, the Plan Commission reviewed a request from the development owner to propose a land use change and zoning for the 32.9 acres of property located north and east of Daisy Drive and Clearview Drive. The Plan Commission set the public hearing date for tonight to hold the notice. So the request is for a land use change from the existing land use of single family to a proposed use of two-family residential. The two-family residential is proposed to be either some sort of a traditional two-family subdivision layout or possibly a two-family planned unit development layout. Clearview Drive is intended to extend to the north, which is consistent with the city's official map. The developer is requesting the change due to the environmental constraints for this site. This site does have history of high groundwater conditions. It also has adverse soil conditions, wetlands, and primary environmental corridor. Also, as a part of this, the utility extension that would go through Clearview Drive along with the road would require oversizing for those underground utilities for sanitary sewer and water. And then also the road pavement itself would also be wider than typical for this development. The surrounding land uses include single family to the west and south. The vacant lands to the north and east are currently open space. And the future land uses for the lands to the north are proposed for single family land use. This two-family residential land use could be considered as an alternate and compatible with the single-family land uses. If the land use is endorsed by the Plan Commission, the developer has also proposed a zoning amendment change, which is scheduled on for tonight's meeting for consideration, to include the change from the RS4 single-family residential to the RD2 two-family residential, along with some of the associated environmental lands for the non-shoreline wetlands, the floodplain wetlands, and floodway wetlands. Public notices were published in the paper. Notices were sent out to all property owners within 400 feet. This was increased due to the request from the commission from our typical 200 feet that's required by statute. As of today's date, staff received general inquiries and also 2 inquiries with opposition to the land use change. If the Plan Commission would find the land use to be acceptable for a change, we'd ask that the Commission approve the resolution acknowledging this change, and this would be forwarded to Common Council for final action.
Got it. Thanks so much, Jim. We'll move on to the public hearing section of our meeting. So just to surmise for the audience, again, we're specifically just talking about the land use from single family to two family residential. For those who would like to speak at the public hearing, This is not a time for back and forth, but rather a time for you to make your statements. Please keep statements short and to the point and on the topic of the land use. Try not to be repetitive. If somebody has already said your remarks, we've heard it and we acknowledge it and we appreciate it. With that, I will open up the public hearing. For those who would like to speak, feel free to come on up and state your name and address. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I guess I shall start. Christopher Killey, address is 2414 Creek Road. I am one of probably several of the bordering landowners that's here in attendance this evening. Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, I would ask that the commission deny the zoning change. When I purchased my property back in 2003, I did my due diligence. I came down to City Hall. I pulled the paperwork and so forth. I knew at some point in time the vacant land behind me would be developed to some extent, and understanding what the zoning was and then later on what would later be an approved subdivision plan for that land, I felt comfortable making my home purchase. If that area behind me, which would be located to the north of Creek Road, were to become a multifamily or duplex type housing, I believe that would have a negative impact on the property values along Creek, and it would be dissimilar of the existing neighborhood construction. Obviously we have concerns of increased population density, which would result in increased traffic, as well as what becomes 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, when duplexes are not primarily owner occupied but instead become renter occupied. I think that would have a great detraction on the community. As far as the watershed areas, that property was previously slated to be developed under the previous owner, and they began with the Daisy subdivision, and they never finished the stormwater plan for that. So currently the stormwater from that entire Daisy subdivision just flows over the yard and essentially floods those of us to the east with lawn ponding and so forth. So again, it comes down to an issue of due diligence. The current developer should have done their due diligence and known issues with the land or known issues with the water table or so forth when they made their decision to purchase those parcels. It's unfortunate that they can't develop it, maybe potentially because of the high water tables or because of other wetland issues, but I don't believe the current homeowners in that area should suddenly have the plan, so to speak, the wool pulled out under their rug, expecting single family development to then suddenly have duplex development occurring behind them. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome,
Mike.
sir.
Sorry?
I said welcome.
Thank you. My name is Peter Striegens, reside at 1225 Lily Avenue, City of West Bend. I agree with our last speaker, 100% agree with our last speaker. As it rained tonight, the little bit of rain that we have pertaining to drainage, I have a 2-foot wide swath, 20 feet long, that where the water from the hill of debris, or excuse me, fill behind our property drains directly into our yard. Once again, ponding is occurring. And it gets worse when it rains harder. I hold here in my hand a copy of the paperwork I received from City Development, Mark, last week, Wednesday. It's not shown where with two different proposed wetlands are on the drawing up there. There's two additional wetlands that would like to be addressed from the board. I have a letter here from a concerned neighbor on Annie Court. The only problem is she agrees with what we are stating. The only problem is she didn't sign it. My other concern is the amount of fill that's back there right now. I have pictures which I will leave with you, Mr. Mayor, that the fill back there starts out at 0. Within 40 feet, it goes to 8 feet high. By the time it hits 350 feet, which I measured it's 14 to 18 feet high. It's another at least 100 feet wide as it spans to the north. What are they going to do all that sand fill? You can't build on sand fill. It's got to be either engineered ground, which will require compaction. Who's going to pay for all the vibrations that go along our Lily Avenue neighborhood with the missing, or with the cracked drywall, with the maybe slighted foundations that might occur? That's pretty much all I have, sir.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, if you want to leave those materials with our city administrator, he can grab them for me too. But thanks for bringing them. Right over there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Matt Nerschel. I live at 2124 Creek Road. Been there since 1983. You guys tried this back in like 2000, 2005 or so, and Mr. Hecklemovich was the developer, and we were told at that time that everything was going to be single family. The only thing that was going to be multifamily would be with the properties that abutted to the backside of Marsh Avenue. Everything else was supposed to be zoned single family, and that's the way it's been. Then along came an idea that, oh, there's Trenton people there, and we can, we don't have to abide by that in back of them, and they made this little narrow pathway to annex their lands into Trenton yet that's about 5 feet long that comes through there. And they decided they're going to put multifamily, but we were assured they were going to be condos. Mr. Hecklemovich built one. It was his model. Never built another one. Then he copped out, said, well, these are too expensive. I can't build. We built one. There was advertisement there for years for the thing. They never put any more up. Then he started to put these side-by-sides up. Those things were trashed a couple of times and had to be rebuilt by the, people coming in there with multifamilies, renting the places. That's not what we bought into. Like this gentleman said, we all bought our properties. We found out what the zoning was supposed to be back there. That's why we moved into those areas of the neighborhood. A lot of new houses back there off of Daisy. They all did their due diligence. They were told it's single family. No multifamily. No, we don't want it. We bought our properties, and our property values could be changed because of this. Maybe they start out as owner occupied. Who knows? They turn into rentals later on. The whole thing goes to hell. We've seen it in other areas. That's not why we bought in this area. It's single family. If you want to build affordable housing, start building the old low budget $200,000 houses in the area instead of making everyone build a $300,000 or $400,000 house. The starter homes in that subdivision in Wingate go like this. Every time someone puts it up for sale, they're gone. Young people are looking for those. They can budget on those. And that's the kind of people that build this community strong, with good morals, good values, and are accountable to the community. We don't need people moving in here that are just going to live here, rent here, and they have no vested interest in the community for the time they're here. Maybe they end up buying a house at some point, but we've seen too much problems with multifamily, and that's not why we bought in these subdivisions. So please, we say no.
Thank you.
My
Welcome.
name's John Holzer. I live on 1107 Clearview Drive, and I agree with everything that's been said before, but I am also concerned that I've seen this go through several different owners in the time that we've been there, since 1994. Several different plans for how that was going to be used that have all changed. And if this gets zoned duplex, and he puts up a few duplexes around the outside, what's to stop somebody in the future coming back and saying, well, there's already a buffer zone of duplexes, now I want to put large apartment buildings in the center there. And then we'd be back here and he'd be saying, well, I've got the buffer zone to do it. And I would hate to see that happen. I think just converting it to the two-family is going to basically double the traffic from that development coming right down Clearview, where I've got to back out of my driveway every morning. And I don't think that's the right place to be putting in multifamily homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. You've heard from me once before already. My name is Kate Barrett. I'm at 211 Daisy Drive. I emailed originally out of my frustration for our lack of aldermen during this. So they have heard from me once already, as well as the development. So out of respect for everyone's time, I won't restate everything that everyone has said, but I wholeheartedly agree with it. When we bought our property 10 years ago, I, again, did my due diligence, even as a first-time home buyer, making sure that it was single family across from us. And to switch it now is unsettling. In agreement with Matt, we've been through this before where they've promised the world and then they put in side by side saying they're owner occupied, and then they ended up renting up from us, and there were problems up there. So it's not unheard of that that'll happen. The other thing that's really concerning with me is that it seems like we're openly admitting that there's water issues and some sort of contaminated soil, or there was I don't exactly know what you said. It was something about the soil that you said was undesirable or something. So we're openly admitting that it's subpar land, subpar soil, and then we want to put subpar housing on it. And I just don't think that's a benefit to the city. I don't think long-term that's a good idea. And I respectfully request that you vote no on it.
Thanks, Kate. Hello.
Good evening. Doug Cravens, 2110 Creek Road. I definitely agree with everyone else that's been up here that this proposal's not a good idea. For the life of me, I don't know why anyone would want to build anything back in those wetlands. I've been in that neighborhood since 1988. When I built my home, my north lot line was the city limits of West Bend. I looked out into an open field. It was nice. I knew that something was going to go there eventually. We thought it would be a school or something like that, but it wasn't. The subdivision showed up. All right, well, we're going to put condos in there. Yeah, you put one in. The rest of them, I would beg to differ how many homes are owner occupied, the duplexes that go around the perimeter of that subdivision. It's not many. And it's not helping things. But back to the land, I see some pumps run year-round on Creek. Year-round. And now they want to put homes back there. You put a basement in, you're going to be pumping water out of there year-round. It is that bad. I've watched the kids drive back there and get stuck in the mud and everything else. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a bad idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Yes, sir.
Joel, I live on Daisy Drive, adjacent to this possible development. I'd like to go on record as saying it would set a bad precedent. I've lived at my present location for about 5 years. Within the first 2-3 years, I had a dog. I would walk her down in that field, that 32-plus acre field, and I know firsthand how wet it is. And in previous years, the farmer did till that land, and there was a good chunk, I don't know what percentage or ratio, but that he couldn't get in. There were cattails present, and I just think it would set a bad precedent. Any type of building, it's not conducive to the area, and furthermore, going from single family to 2-family or more would just further, I think, bring problems. It's just not the right area. It's too doggone wet. And there's a berm that exists somebody else made reference to. Is there contaminated soil perhaps even in that, if that would be used in the future for fill? You know, what safeguards speaking from an environmentally perspective, or point of view. I don't see anything that, that would be beneficial to the community. It's just too much density. If you'd go to 2-family or more, it's just too much density for the surrounding area. Thank you. In addition, I agree with everything that was previously stated. I just say ditto to it, you know.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. My name is Mary Pickard. I live at 1316 Sunflower Avenue. I'd like to have somebody explain to me what environmental constraints are that prevent single-family dwellings to go up in that area. If a single-family unit can't go in there, then how can a duplex go in there? And I agree again with everything that has been said. I think it's a bad idea. And another thing, you'll get into that area on Clearview. How will you get out of that area? It has to have an exit in that area for people to leave it too. It can't go all in and out on Clearview. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else? Yep, go ahead.
My name is Shannon Hickman. I live at 2118 Creek Road. Been there a little under a year, and I just wanted to express that I do agree with everything everyone has already said. I would be opposed to building multifamily units in that area. I would actually be opposed to building anything in that area. Part of the appeal for me to move to Creek was that I was entering a long-established neighborhood. I wasn't going to have to deal with building sounds, construction. I know the neighborhood on Lily and Sunflower was just about finished as well, so that wasn't a concern. And now to have to think about having to listen to the multitude of construction that could possibly take place in that area is a little disconcerting when it's just to the north of me. Because like I said, part of the appeal was that I was moving into an established neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public who would like to speak on this item? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Michael Kempfer, 1305 Lily. All I'd like to say is when it was annexed into the city of West Bend, it was zoned single family. Now, since then, you mentioned water and every other thing, and that already was taken care of many years ago. They came out, they drilled holes and everything. And anybody who was going to purchase that property knew, I mean, this isn't a surprise to them, that it is single family. It's zoned single family. And if they didn't want to build single family homes on that property, then they shouldn't have bought it. Simple as that. I agree with everybody else here. When we first moved in there, when it rained, we thought we had a lake behind our house. It was just 30 acres of water. All you could see is water. You couldn't see grass or anything. So I don't know how they could build there either, but like I said, anybody who purchased that property knew what the zoning was, and if they didn't want to build single family, then they shouldn't have bought the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep. You coming back for more?
Yes, it just occurs to me, this is John Holzer from 1107 Clearview, that at this point in time, since the election was just held yesterday, that 6th district does not have an elected representative on the Common Council. One was appointed to fill a vacancy, and I don't really see why this has to get talked about and pushed through right now, instead of giving a 6th district representative time to get settled in and to truly be a part of this decision-making body. And I just feel like we are kind of underrepresented in this matter.
Well, just so I can clear that up for you. So we did hold the election yesterday.
Yes.
Whatever decision gets made here is going to be then sent to the Common Council. At the time that the Common Council would bring it up, which I plan on that happening in May, we will have seated a District 6 representative. So I just wanted to let you know that.
I understand.
Okay.
But I think the impact here isn't the same as if there would have been a representative. Maybe this even never would have made it this far if there had been other representation, so.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Going once, going twice. Oh, yep. See, that's why I keep asking. Go ahead.
Kim Krimmer, I'm on Scenic Drive, so I'm a little ways off. But is it possible to answer that one lady's question about why it's desirable to build multifamily homes as opposed to single-family homes on that land?
So I've jotted down actually a couple of those questions. So when we go to the discussion part, I'll ask Jim to answer those. So yeah, I
Okay.
got that written down.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's been motion second to end the public hearing. All those in favor of ending the public hearing, so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So now we'll turn it over to our commission, and I would like to start off with 2 questions for Jim, jumping off the public hearing. So first off, if you maybe want to address the developer's reasons for citing the environmental constraints that caused this proposed change, and then if you could explain the type of housing that's allowed in RD2, because it sounded like there was some confusion in that as well.
Sure.
Thanks.
So the environmental constraints, this area, as well as the neighbors know, there's high groundwater conditions out there. So we did a soil mitigation plan for the Willowview developments. So basically we adjusted the grades to be above groundwater. We've put additional measures in for sump pumps and what have you to mitigate that groundwater. We had some areas also in that area that the soil conditions were adverse for bearing capacities for the footings and for the foundations. So what they did is they, either undercut, the soils out there and brought in material that was suitable for the footings for the foundations of the houses, or they mitigated it through extra wide footings or something to overcome those adverse conditions that we have. So this site has similar characteristics with that. From my understanding, the groundwater is actually higher over in this area. So the developer was proposing to do the duplex or the 2 families so they could do basementless structures. Most houses in single families, people, they expect to have a basement. There are other ways that you can take it and overcome that too by doing, what they call raised ranches or raised foundations and what have you. But he was looking at the considerations for this. Again, from our planning standpoint, we looked at it as, this could be an alternate. Again, but it's up to the commission and the council to make the final decisions. We don't have a layout or anything. He didn't provide a concept plan or anything to go with this. But again, it could go as a traditional, subdivision where it's platted lots, or we could do what we call planned unit development, where we work around the unique conditions. The other part is that we have the environmental corridor, which is the green area. That is going to be preserved. It's what we've routinely have done in our developments, where we acknowledge it from the sewer pact, the Southeast Regional Planning Commission area. That's a higher desired environmental area. So that part would be preserved as open space. The wetlands that were identified by a wetland specialist, those areas are identified under the zoning map. I didn't have it on the land use plan, but those are wetland areas that are regulated through the DNR and through our code too, that we would work around. And given the position of those wetlands, it makes it a little more difficult to do a traditional subdivision around these, these areas. So that was one of the other reasons why he was requesting the possibility of changing it to the duplex. Along with the construction costs for that, we have larger roads, we have larger utilities, very deep utilities out there. So it's also a way to help overcome some of the costs of construction for the subdivision in general. So that's really what we have for the environmental and the adverse conditions that we have out there for that site. And then,
If you could just explain the definition of the RD2
Sure.
and
Sure.
what type of housing.
So RD2, we have a district for RS, which is single-family residential. RD is two-family residential, which is basically duplexes, so it's 2 units per building. And then we have multifamily, which is basically 3 units or more per building. So this is duplex, and this allows for only a duplex or a side-by-side, either next to each other or upper lower, to allow duplex buildings in that zoning district. We do allow, by a conditional use permit, that if someone wanted to build a single family in there, they could do that through a conditional use process to build a single family home compatible with the neighborhood. But these are duplexes versus, and it's not multifamily.
Thank you. Well, those were my immediate questions. I'll open it up for the commission if there's any others.
Jim, could you put up page 15 on the screen, maybe then everybody can kind of see where the wetlands are in the coordinates, gives a better kind of view of it? There.
Yeah.
So the next item is
Or is that okay to go to this right now?
This will give you a more definition of what we have. So the one green area up along the edge, up in here, this stuff is the environmental corridor, and we have wetlands in that area also. We do have some floodlands over on the far east edge. That was denoted from the 2013 FEMA study that we have for floodplain and wetlands. And this is a delineated wetland area, a pocket area. This little finger in here is a ditch that was constructed for the outfall for the storm sewer at the end of Daisy and Clearview. So that's just a drainage way to drain the water to the east where it naturally flowed. This is another little wetland pocket, which I believe was created from the stockpiling of the fill that they had out here. So this is just a backwater, but over time it started to meet the criteria for a wetland area, and the same is true with that far north edge. So these may be mitigated that they could fill it, but again, it depends on the design of the subdivision and the development that they propose.
One more question, Jim.
Sure.
These are two-family duplexes, not two-family condos, right? So this will be, or can it be condos?
It can be condos. Condo is a form of ownership, so the city doesn't regulate the type of ownership. They could be owner-occupied buildings, they could be rental buildings, they could, from the city standpoint, ownership is something different that we do not regulate. It's the use that we regulate.
Yes, sir.
Jim, two things to clarify. One will be easy. There was the perception that there's contaminated soil, and there was some confusion about that, if you could clarify that. And then the other thing was, a lot of people were commenting about water flow after the rain. Now, I can understand if they're seeing that horizontal black line, I forgot what you call that, the drainage easement perhaps.
Oh, that ditch?
Yeah.
It was basically a drainage swale.
A drainage swale, but it sounds like it's going in people's backyards. Is that the situation, and why is
That I
that?
don't know. Our office hasn't received any calls about flooded backyards or anything.
Absolutely.
They're on your,
I'll tell
you just
our-
raise your
our
hand.
office, our office hasn't received it, and if there are problems, please let us know so we can, obviously there is now, so we can look at the areas then. Okay.
And then the other thing, and then that that there's no contamination back there.
As far as I know, no. I don't know of any, it's not any inventories on our DNR stuff that we have. And I don't know if, as far as I know, there hasn't been any material brought in that's been contaminated.
Thank you.
I complained in 2004, 2005 to, I believe it was either the planning office or the building inspector's office, and that's when they presented me with the approved subdivision plan.
Sir, we're not in the public comment section, but if you do want to make a quick comment, I'll allow you to if you want to go up to the mic just so we can get it recorded.
I apologize.
That's all right.
I personally complained in 2004 or 2005, or soon thereafter, after that drainage ditch was cut, because you would literally watch the water flow out of the tubes that comes out from underneath Clearview, and you could watch the water almost like a wave move through that land and move through my yard and several of my neighbors' yards as that water tried to make its way to the creek. And I came here and I was presented with, at that time, an approved subdivision plan. I believe it was under Mr. Hekimovich, if I'm saying that correctly, and was told not to worry, there's going to be some stormwater ponds and this and that, and it's just temporary while the construction is ongoing. And obviously here we are today. So I have previously complained to the city personally after that drainage ditch was put in.
Thanks for that background. Commissioner Schmidt?
Jim, maybe you can help me understand this. So out of the 32 acres, how much of it is actually buildable? And has the developer talked about what kind of density, how many lots he plans on proposing?
We have not gotten a concept plan or anything for the layout, whether it's going to be traditional subdivision, all PUD, and part subdivision. We haven't gotten any kind of a layout for that. Off the top of my head, I don't have those calculations on environmental versus the buildable area.
To me, it just seems like it's going to be very difficult. Obviously, other people have looked at this a lot longer than I have, but just looking at the challenges associated with this property, it's going to be really difficult to make something work with circulation or access, like through Clearview. When you take the roads that would be needed to service it, I just wonder how many actual lots are going to be feasible. I'm having a hard time, a lot of challenges with this. That's, I guess, my point.
Sure, and again, we have not received any kind of a concept or anything, or any kind of layouts for the land since, the proposal was brought forth.
And I know it's kind of the cart before the horse, like that would come after the rezoning and the approving the comprehensive plan change, but I have a hard time supporting it without some kind of understanding, because I'm not a huge fan of changing zoning without just cause.
Sure.
If I can jump in, I agree with you, and I'll be voting against this for two reasons. The first one is that from a planning standpoint, I don't think it makes sense to put an island of, it's not exactly an island because there's a little bit of two-family in there as well, but from a planning standpoint, it doesn't make sense to me to put that almost island in there. The second reason I'll be voting against it is just because property owners did buy that property thinking there would be single-family back there, and I believe we need to stick to it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from the commission? Yes, sir.
If Clearview was extended, some of those lots to the west would be appropriate for single family, right? The water wouldn't be an issue there, right?
It could be an option for, right now that's smaller what is it? I think
Like
seven,
elongated
7.8,
rectangular.
yeah, that's 7 acres there. That is already currently zoned single family on the far west end there. So, yeah, that could be traditional lots along that west edge. And the stuff as you go further east, that's where it gets a little more complicated due to the shape of the property with the environmentals, with the wetlands and everything in there too.
If Clearview went through with the east side, you think that would have to be slab construction?
It's hard to say. I don't know. I don't have all their geotechnical that they have for their groundwaters and for the the soil conditions. So it's hard to say what it would have to be.
Okay.
And can I just say one more thing? Jim, I just really want to tell you I appreciate very much your job. Your job is to work with people who come in, who own land, and they want to develop in the city. And so I know that you're sitting here with that lens, and you're doing a great job. I just don't see this as being a fit for this area.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I guess just by seeing the amount of people here, I guess they feel pretty strongly about their neighborhood. So that's a plus. I mean, like you said, Chris, coming in here, we very rarely see this amount of people. So that does tell something about your neighborhood. I guess the only thing I would say is, if he wants to come back, this Diamond Holdings, and put a rough plan up so we could look at it before we approve anything, so we each have an idea. Right now, I struggle with it too, because I don't know how they're gonna punch enough duplexes in there to make it work with the roads, so I struggle with it also.
Thank you. Commissioner Butchlick?
Yeah, I guess this question would be for Max. Max, if we have such problems with wetlands in there, what's your concern about streets, the conditions of streets put in there? Are we going to have major problems? Like, I know for a fact Deerfield on the east side, Deerfield is like a washboard, and I think Creek Drive also towards the east going out towards Heckovich subdivision is kind of rough in that. Will we have problems with that subdivision as well with road conditions?
Obviously, when we face adverse conditions of the soils, we would have to take extra measures in the road design to address those. So we would want obviously soil study reports, and then we would have an adapted design so that we would avoid these problems with the roads. We had a few roads recently where when we reconstructed them, we added 14 inches of breaker run under the road foundation itself. So just to bridge those areas and make sure we would not have these problems in the future. So there are solutions to extend roads through those type of lands. We would just have to do our due diligence and apply the proper design for those.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I would also be voting against this, but for full disclosure to the neighborhood, and Jim or Mark can comment, even if we turn this down, it would not preclude the developer from coming back with a new proposal for mixed zoning or a PUD, so that wouldn't necessarily end this for good. He is a landowner. We can't say you can't build on it, period, forever. So it's possible that there'll be further discussions on this if he decides to do something differently. Just wanted to make that known if this fails.
Yep. Thank you.
Could I ask a question? I know it's not public comment, but could you explain what PUD is?
Yep, so the question was if we could explain what PUD was.
Sure. So a PUD is a planned unit development. It's an overlay district that we have for the city. We have those in multiple areas throughout the city. So what the planned unit development overlay district actually does and helps with development is it gives some design flexibility for unique sites that we have. In this case, this could possibly fall under the requirements to use a PUD overlay on there. So what it helps out with is it allows to do, say, private roads, where you can have smaller road widths instead of a standard street section with a right-of-way of 66-foot wide. You could narrow down the road to say 24-foot wide or 30-foot wide for vehicle traffic. It gives you the ability to move and orientate your buildings in different manners. So it's not a traditional setback that we have for a traditional subdivision lot. And it allows you to, be able to, say, cluster buildings together or to, help spread them out a little bit better and just create a better orientation for the development of the property to help alleviate and get the needed densities or whatever to help overcome the costs for the development of the property.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions from the commission? Otherwise, before we vote, I just want to say thank you again to all those in the audience for coming out. This is definitely a good example of civic engagement 101, so I'm sure you guys all learned a lot. So thank you for attending. And with that, I will be looking for a motion, and we're either going to look for an approval or denial of the resolution.
Move to deny.
Thank you. And motion second. Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of denial, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and that motion fails. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our agenda if you'd like. Otherwise, thanks for coming out and have a great night. Being that item 4B1 failed, we can skip over C1 as it's now inactionable. So we'll move on to item D, site plans, number 1, which is SP-21-004, a site plan for Mavens on Main for exterior architectural building elevation renovations at 241 North. Oh, sure. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, then we'll come back and read all this again.
Like, if he would submit a new proposal, do you sign another letter? Just so we know. Okay, just checking. Thank you.
In case the commission didn't hear, we are at a 5-minute break, so if you didn't go to the bathroom or anything, you can.
Probably since last.
Like the last time we had one before you, when we were putting the industrial park together, that one housing development.
Yeah, sure, right.
In the town of Trenton. And it was interesting because they had a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they had an expectation that somehow. I'm coming from. That's not my problem.
Yeah. So I joined January of 2020. So the TID 14 was created in 2020 while I was here, but some of those meetings were before. I remember having
We had
sent
to
a letter.
acquire the property before we
Yeah.
created the TID.
I think we sent out I remember sending a letter out to neighborhood 200 feet or something, but it wasn't a contentious issue at that time, whatever it was.
Well, they flagpole
It happened.
They did not want to do
Yeah, wait for the rain to stop.
all of those activities took place before we created.
Joe, nice to meet you. Yeah. A lot cooler in New York.
Yeah.
That was a record since COVID, I think.
Yeah, that's what the same. Most people in here for a year.
That was about it, too. We couldn't visit, maybe a few more, like everybody else taking
No, we're trying to like squeeze people. People like together.
I'm leaving tomorrow. We're leaving tomorrow morning, so. Oh, yeah.
All right, I think we're all back in our seats here. Now we'll go on to D, site plans number 1, which is SP-21-004, site plan for Mavens on Main for exterior architectural building elevation renovations at 241 North Main Street by Adam Hurdle of American Architectural Group, Inc. The applicant is Chan Goman of Mavens on Main. The agent is Adam Hurdle himself. Jim, take it away.
Thank you. So this site plan approval is for architectural renovations for 241 North Main. The purpose is for just the exterior portion of the building for this this half of the unit. The property is Zone B2, which is our central business district. The site plan is provided is defining the outdoor front seating area for the tenant area for seating, along with windows and portable tables south of that unit, as shown on the let's see here, the site plan here, down for this area. So the actual architectural building elevations consist of removing the front facade windows that exist today and replacing it with a new set of windows that actually roll up, and they're also creating a knee wall on the lower portion of that with a shelf area and then seating behind that within the building, as you can see in the lower picture of the plan set. The lower portion of the knee wall that's being constructed will be constructed with a timber bar-colored hardy panel, and the windows themselves will be a dark anodized bronze-finished aluminum frame roll-up window. The existing canopies or awnings that are out there today are planning to be replaced, and they're going to coordinate that with the western half of the, or I should say the northern half of the building, to be consistent all the way through. The future sign location is also proposed on the building elevation, just to show the future location of the sign that will be submitted at a later date for approval for staff. Staff would recommend approval of the site plan with the condition that prior to the use of the outdoor seating area, that the extension of premise and a cafe license from the clerk's office is obtained prior to use of that outdoor seating.
Thanks, Jim. I'll open up if there's any questions for Jim. Commissioner Dolnick.
Jim, I couldn't tell from the drawings, are the windows going to open up on either side of the front door? Or was it just one set of windows? Or
No, I believe it's both sides of the windows that are going to, on either side of the door are going to roll up.
Okay. So I had a question about that. thinking about licensed premise and what can be done, is that going to be used as an extension of the bar where people are going to be placing orders, or is that just for the convenience of the servers?
That I don't know for sure. I know the chief did have some comments to me. He called me in regards to this. And he did have concerns with how the code is written for the premise and the cafe licenses, where they have to be seated and served. So he does have concerns with, as a part of the extension of premise and the cafe license for the use of those bar area or those table areas or shelf areas for that, and also maintaining the appropriate distance for passage for pedestrians.
Yeah. I guess that issue wouldn't be for Plan Commission, but it'll have to be addressed at some point by the licensing board.
Correct, that would
and
be
the
addressed as
council.
part of the extension of premise and the cafe license.
Okay.
Commissioner Newman?
Tables and chairs, would that be all season or would it be taken in winter?
They would need to be taken, our code is pretty explicit with the cafe licenses on what they have to do at the end of each night and throughout the year with them.
Was that it, Bernie? Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Marischal?
Jim, this is just for the facade. There's nothing in the right of way.
Correct.
This proposed.
Correct. This is just the facade that
besides the awning that goes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And there we actually issue a temporary
through
grant
the
of
clerk,
privilege.
Yeah, and then that comes to us too. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. It's been motion second. Any other comments or questions?
I'll abstain.
Thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes. And moving on to SB-20-023, site plan for a 177-unit mixed-use multifamily and commercial development located at the northeast corner of North Main Street in West Washington by Kyle Striegens of HKS Holdings LLC. The applicant is Kyle, and the agent is Eric Ponto of Engberg Anderson Architects, if I'm saying that correct. Yes, sir. You'll be abstaining. Anybody else, just for the record? Okay. I will note that abstention, and I believe we're going to start off with a presentation by HKS. Is that correct? Sure. As long as you don't mind being next to each other. You could just introduce yourselves for the commission.
Yes, my name is Tyler Hawley, and I'm a principal at HKS Holdings, and this is my business partner, Joe Klein.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, for allowing us to present tonight. Is there a way for us to get this screen to go? All right.
And then just the arrows to move to page to page.
Left, right, up, down.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So when I received an email from a local broker over a year ago marketing this site, I was immediately enamored with the location of our proposed development. The marketing material featured a drone video highlighting the site, the Milwaukee River, and downtown West Bend from the air. We immediately jumped on the opportunity, and after working with the seller and getting the site under contract, we began to design the project to best integrate it into the community while taking advantage of its location, views, and proximity to downtown West Bend. A couple of high-level attributes that drew us to the site are, first and foremost, connectivity to downtown. We feel our project to be an extension of downtown. We really focused on sightlines from downtown to our project's retail space and presence on the corner of Main and Washington, which is the image that you're looking at behind me. We anticipate this to be a lively corner, viewable from both Main Street and Washington Avenue. Secondly, activation of the Riverwalk. Rather than building a solid wall at the first floor of the Riverwalk, we have designed 8 walk-up units that will feature landscaping and outdoor terraces for the units. This softens the building at that level and gives those residents direct access to what will be the newly designed Riverwalk. We also set back the upper floors of the building. As you can tell, this is kind of a small shot of the Riverwalk frontage. But we held the mass of the building back from the Riverwalk while still allowing for great views and outdoor space for our residents. In fact, all of the residents within our project have either balconies or terraces, giving immediate access to the outdoors. Finally, the width of the site and natural grade change sloping back towards the Milwaukee River allowed us to design townhomes and a leasing office facing Main Street, with a green courtyard leading up to the larger portion of the building, which softened the project and allow for a more residential feel, integrating it into the surrounding neighborhood. Before I turn over to my partner, Joe, who will discuss the plans in greater detail, I would like to add that we at HKS are not your typical cookie-cutter apartment developers. We have our finger on the pulse of creative multifamily design and truly take our buildings to the next level from both exterior appearance to interior design and livability, creating a community that residents and West Bend will be proud of for what we think is generations to come. Joe?
Thanks, Tyler. Again, I'm Joe Klein, 1015 Catherine Drive, a principal of HKS Holdings. So just so everybody understands this site, we're on the corner, the northeast corner of Washington and Main Street. It's where the old brewery is with some, two-story older industrial type buildings and a vacant parking lot on the corner here. So we have two buildings. Building one is the larger of the two buildings. It's 131 units. This is where we have the 7 townhomes along Main Street, and the major building mass is tucked back along the Milwaukee River. You can see that this building has a pretty expansive green roof above our parking deck. It allows for outdoor terrace space as well as some outdoor space for some of our common area amenities. The site is split by the old vacated Franklin Street. There's some utilities in the ground there that we can't move or be extremely cost prohibitive to move. So we've taken advantage of that to create our access point between the two buildings to access one of our parking entrances on building 1, one of our parking entrances on building 2. It also provides location for loading and unloading and moving and move-in and move-outs for residents. Building 1 also has a second point of egress to the parking garage up here. Building 2 is 46 units. We have a little bit of on-site surface parking here as well as along both buildings on Franklin Street. Here are some high-level floor plans of Building 1. You can see the large U shape. The project is a mix of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, along with this 7 townhomes along Main Street. And can you, okay, yeah. And then the parking below, this is what Tyler was talking about. We have these 8 walk-up units that are actually at the lower level of our parking garage, but instead of having a concrete wall there, we decided to design that backside and take advantage of those walk-up units along the Milwaukee River, and we get 8 2-bedroom units facing the river. Our parking down here includes dog wash, car wash stations. It has motorcycle parking. Again, there's 2 points of egress in and out of the underground. And a little unique feature down here is each one of the townhomes has a separate staircase up from parking into the units so that all 7 townhomes have direct access to the secure parking. Building 2 is similar except for its shape. We have 1 level of underground parking. Except for the fact that this is the main corner along Washington and the corner of Main, where we have about 6,500 square feet of retail space. In addition to the retail space, there's an overhang that'll allow the retailer, whether it be a restaurant, a brewery, or a soft goods retailer, to have nice outdoor space. We do plan to have a nice hardscaped and landscape buffer around that the corner intersection to help soften both noise and visibility of traffic. This first floor has 1 point of egress, but there's less units in Building 2, so there's less parking demand down there. And we do have our architect, Michael Duncan, here, who can go into more detail on elevations and floor plans if the commission would like.
Sure. Go ahead.
Hi, Michael Duncan. I'm with Engberg Anderson. I'm actually filling in for Eric Ponto, who would normally be here. I'm just going to talk briefly about some of the main elevations on the buildings. Building 1, this top elevation would be the Main Street elevation. And I think as Tyler described pretty well, it kind of shows that concept of tucking these townhomes into this courtyard to bring down the scale of that street. We still have 2 portions of the building that are 4 stories that come up to Main Street, that kind of bookend that the townhome and the plaza. And that's kind of where we're using most of our brick, and we're also using some brick on these townhomes here, along with some cement board, and we're creating this rhythm as you come down the street, but we don't want it to be very monotonous. We want it to change as you go, but also be a consistent look. And same thing on the back, we have a rhythm down the Riverwalk, some cement board in a board and batten configuration, which is a good material for a residential feel instead of having this giant building that maybe doesn't feel very residential. So building 2 has a very similar palette of materials. A lot of glass at the retail portion and some operable garage doors that both bring in natural light and give the flexibility of that retailer, whoever it might be, to open up during the nice weather months and have a flow between inside and outside. There's also some masonry on this building, and it also becomes that signage element that draws you from the axis of Main Street downtown, and then that actually becomes the entrance portal to the retail portion. So it's really a beacon for the area to bring patrons to this site here. Here's a material board that we're looking at using for this project. There's 2 hardy materials we're using. First is an iron gray, but it would be in a board and batten configuration, which you could see in one of the renderings of the Riverwalk. And then also some white cement board in 3 different configurations as a panel with reveals in it, a lap siding like shown here, and also a board and batten configuration like on the Riverwalk. That would be at the townhomes. Also some light colored brick with some light colored mortar, a smooth dark brick, which would be at the townhomes. And this doesn't really reflect the mortar that we would choose, but the brick is more accurate to what we're going with. Where the roof overhangs are, we have some sealed cedar soffits, and this also appears at the entry of the retail to help bring some warmth into the project. And there's some areas, some darker areas shown on the renderings that would be a corrugated metal panel, and that would be in black. We also have, we're going with some Anderson 100 series windows with a black frame that would provide a nice contrast to the lighter colors. And that's all I had.
Anything else you had?
I guess in terms of questions or comments, we're here to answer anything you guys may have.
Sounds great. Well, thanks for the presentation. I'll just make a quick comment. I love the sleek, modern look of the buildings. That looks very professional and nice. So thanks, guys. We'll kick it over to Jim if he wants to add anything else beyond what we just saw.
Really, for the site itself, they are just the commission knows also, as part of the site plan, we do have a separate screened refuse area located just north of building number 2. And that's going to be utilized for the commercial unit. So they have access to a refuse area, and then they have the refuse handler can have access to that for that commercial unit, which will be located again on the north side of that building. They are providing both in-building parking and exterior parking in between the 2 buildings. We're providing 150 stalls in the large building, and with some 9 parking stalls on the south side of that building, 44 stalls inside the building for the building number 2, along with 13 additional stalls on the surface for that area. Just to be noted that under the MXD zoning, on-site parking is not required under the zoning, but with it being a residential-based type use, the parking need is basically designed off the specific need of the use for the parking, or what the developer would need for that development to operate. We have pedestrian access from the public sidewalks, both adjacent on Main Street and also on the Riverwalk. We are making provisions for public sidewalk access along the west side of building number 2 through municipal easement on that. We also had a traffic impact analysis done for the area, which has been reviewed by the city engineer along with DOT. There are some public infrastructure improvements that are going to be required for that, which include signal timing, pavement markings, revision of the some of the public curb lines and crosswalk areas as identified in that traffic impact analysis. Emergency access and maintenance was requested to the Riverwalk and from Main Street to the Riverwalk. So the developer is proposing to provide that via easement along that north side of building number 1 in conjunction with the access easement they have for that north side of that building. Fire protection, the fire department is requesting some fire protection hydrants or other means for the east side of the building along the Riverwalk area. So we're working with the developer on that portion to address those needs. We do have some municipal easements that we will be clarifying for the existing utilities that are out there for sanitary, storm, and water. And that will be addressed and taken care of as part of the development proposal and the developer's agreement. And a lot of these other items that were mentioned before will be covered under the developer's agreement that we have in place with this. The other unique thing that we have for this site is the overhead utilities for electric. We have major electric lines that are running through here, so the developer and the city are working with We Energies to relocate those utilities to be underground or by other means of changing the pole locations for that to provide electrical service. And again, that's all addressed in part of the developer's agreement with the site plan approval. Landscaping is being provided as part of the development. We are working with the developer also with the renovations for the Riverwalk. So the landscaping may change a little bit based on the final designs of that, but we are providing landscaping throughout the site for that also, along with curb lines. And the building architecture, as explained by HKS here, it's a mix of corrugated metal, brick, fiber cement boards, lap siding, and they're also incorporating green roofs in the areas in the courtyard of building 1, and we have some green roof on the building number 2 by the commercial areas. Overall, staff would recommend approval of the site plan with our listed conditions that we had in the staff memo.
Thank you, Jim. So we'll turn over to the commission, and I just want to ask the first question here. I gave Kyle heads up, so hopefully gave you guys a heads up. We touched on parking, and we heard a little bit of explanation from Jim, but could you explain maybe more specifically the ratios of the living units to parking that's available?
Yeah, sure thing, Mr. Mayor. So like we said, we have 177 total units. Our total parking count is 272 spaces on site if you include the 10 motorcycle parking spaces below building 1. That does include 40 spaces that we're getting from our neighbor to the north. So we have an agreement with the property owner to the north, who's also giving us an access agreement to a ramp essentially to get down to that second point of egress into building number 1. He's allowing us to use up to 40 spaces for our residential tenants to rent if we need those spaces at any point during our project.
So the spaces are included in that 272 you said?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Thanks. Anyone else?
And that gives you a ratio of, I'm sorry about that, of 1.54 to answer your question per unit.
Got it.
And we're
Thank
just
you.
about 1 per one for per bedroom.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yes.
First of all, it's very impressive looking building, I'll say that. It's going to be great for the city of West Bend. As the Riverwalk goes in there, is the Riverwalk going to be ahead of you guys building or not?
It'll most likely be, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, ideally concurrently.
Okay, that was.
This section of the Riverwalk is going to leapfrog the sections to the south of 33 based on this project.
Okay, because that's my concern, put the Riverwalk in, and construction, they're going to knock it back out. So let's go inside, that's what I'm saying.
Coordinating that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Anybody else from the commission? Yes, sir.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The 272 spaces, that was with the 40 leased?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Dolnick.
I had several questions. I'm afraid to touch my tablet. I'm on the traffic impact analysis, and if I try to move it, it's gonna crash again because it's just a little too much for this little device. But okay, it's about the parking. I'll start with the parking, and then I'll go to the TIA. You're referring to the ratio and connecting the ratio of parking spaces to the residential units, but I don't hear that you're accounting for parking for the retail or the commercial on Washington Street. First of all, the parking on Franklin Street, I can't look at it now. Is it 12 diagonal spaces on Franklin Street?
I believe there's 18. There's 9 on each side.
9 on each side, thank you. Are they going to be posted? I mean, they're going to get parked in, I think, with your residents, unless they're posted. Are they going to be reserved for the use of the commercial, or are they just not going to be marked at all? Have you anticipated
The
that?
plan right now is to have them reserved for residential units. So if you're John Smith and you're renting a apartment and you need a second space that we can't accommodate in the basement, you'll get reserved, space number 5 outside.
Okay. So you have the potential for a restaurant, for example, going in there, and there isn't going to be any parking unless they cross Washington Street to get to the bank parking that we've acquired, or where are they going to?
So part of the negotiations with the city has been connectivity between downtown and our project, and one of the proposals within the development agreement is an underground tunnel beneath Washington along the Riverwalk. And we've been talking to the city about utilization of the now city-owned parking lot behind BMO. There's several examples of this throughout other, you might call them suburban, urban communities, Wauwatosa, Cedarburg, Mequon, Grafton, several communities out in Lake Country. There's several commercial buildings in the downtown area, and very few of them have their own designated parking. I think patrons are used to parking in an area, a commercial area, and then patronizing not just one restaurant or shop, but several. So we're anticipating that that's what will happen here. We do have 14 surface parking spots in front of the building as well.
Okay. Maybe a cultural thing that we're not used to here. The picture of the Main Street exposure, it appeared as though, if you're able to put that back up.
This one?
The elevation, I'm sorry. The elevation picture of Main Street.
There we go.
Not that one.
This one?
No. It almost looked as though it was elevated above Main Street, but I don't know if.
Are you talking about this right here? So these are 3 of the 7 townhomes with this small building, which is our leasing office, which is right in the middle of building 1.
It was actual, you had the Riverwalk elevation, and above that was the Main Street elevation. It was on one picture.
It actually, you're correct. It is it's 3 feet higher than the sidewalk elevation.
Yeah, so the sidewalk is at the base of that wall?
Yes.
So what is the architectural or engineering reason for doing that?
So basically, there isn't enough slope to get the parking down far enough without having to bury some of those units on the Riverwalk side.
Okay.
So we raised up that whole building, and it's nice because it creates a little more of a buffer between Main Street and those townhome units. So you're not getting, headlights blasted right into your living room. So I think that 3 feet actually ends up helping us.
Okay.
And then we have an ADA ramp that you can traverse up to that level.
That was going to be my other question.
Yep, it's right next to there's a little bit of a stair, and I think we showed that in one of so there's a stair here, but you actually can slip behind this wall, and that's an ADA ramp that goes back and forth and gets you up that 3 feet. And that would be also our opportunity for development signage.
Okay. And then, thank you, sir.
Yep.
And then just one last thing. In the traffic impact analysis, and maybe Jim or Max would want to talk about this. I know this isn't a stadium, it's not a theater, traffic isn't going to be going in and out all at the same time. But the Main Street and North Side driveway is single shared left turn, right turn lane. Main Street and Beach is a single shared left turn through and right turn lane. So all 2 or 3 directions are in one lane. So one vehicle that is waiting to turn left backs everybody up behind it. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
And I have to tell you, the TIA is hard. When you get into the numbers, it's getting hard to understand. Plus, my computer kept going blotto with this. Do you have a concern with that based on the volume and the TIA?
No. When we were approached by TADI who was going to do the TIA, they asked us for a scope, and we usually do the weekday peak hour, and we also asked them to specifically look at Saturdays and also Friday nights because of Regner Park and the events that could happen there. So with the analysis, they were showing some conflict zones on Washington Street for eastbound vehicle making a left turn on Main Street to go north. That can be adjusted with slight retiming of the traffic signal. And at Beach Street, so there was going to be a queue there for southbound vehicles on Main Street coming to Washington. That would in the 95 percentile block Beach Street, and that is one of the reasons why we're moving the crosswalk that is just south of Beach Street to the north side of the intersection. So there will be public improvements there, moving that crosswalk to keep pedestrians away from the queued vehicles. And then we'll have additional pavement markings for vehicles to not block the intersection. So I think it was a fairly in-depth analysis that allowed us to catch any issues we could have with traffic there, looking at different time frame, a little bit out of the box, and then finding the solutions for the issues that were revealed by the study. So I feel comfortable with it. In addition, I had Art Bauman from the DOT review, because I always involve them on anything on Washington Street, and also that portion of Main Street is State Highway 144. So they did an in-depth review of the study as well, and they were comfortable with the proposed improvement that came out of that.
Thank you, Max.
I was
Yes, sir.
just going to reiterate what Jen was saying, that with the restaurant parking there, go downtown West Bend on a Friday or Saturday night, you can't find a spot. People are willing to walk downtown. You think you're going to pull in front of Norbert on a Friday night? You ain't parking in front there. They're willing to walk. So I can see people parking behind BMO if the restaurant's full and going there. I don't see that's an issue.
No, we appreciate that. And we also know that retailers that are attracted to these first floor spaces and these mixed use projects, they do rely on the tenants. I mean, there might only be 200 people, some people living there, but, you know, they're going to patronize the local spot, so that alleviates some of our concern as well.
Any other questions from the commission? Yep, Commissioner Gannon.
I've got similar concerns regarding the parking as well. And I understand the MXD does not require the parking there. Is the number of parking stalls that will be available consistent with other multifamily properties in West Bend, I guess?
They're close, but again, it's all based off of what the developer feels the need is for the, for the operations of the site. This one is, a little bit lower than our typical, but again, this is based off of what, they've done in the past for their developments similar to this, just like the other developments that we've done for the MXD and our other districts. Those have all been compared to what those developers have done in the past for their other developments also. So again, it's all purely based off of, what the developer feels the full need is for that in the MXD district.
Anything else?
I
Yes.
think all my questions have been answered, and the building is beautiful. I'm wondering about the screened refuge area, actually, that you mentioned. What is it surrounded by? It's on Main Street, right? Am I reading that correctly?
No, it's actually in between the two buildings it's off of the vacated Franklin Street. So
Okay.
it's actually set back closer to the east end of the building.
Okay, that makes me feel much better. And what is it surrounded by?
I believe it was cedar, or some kind of a composite.
That's right.
Sorry, I'm too tall here. Mark Seidel, Pinnacle Engineering Group, 20725 West Blue Mound Road in Brookfield, civil engineer for the project. That proposed trash enclosure spot will have some kind of fencing material around it. I don't believe the exact material has been identified yet, but I know that we want it to be complementary to the other materials on the building. We also are running into just some grading constraints in that area. So we'd like to kind of position this trash enclosure where it's out of sight, but also not have it on a grade change of 5% or more where trash cans can be rolling away or doors swinging out and hitting cars. So I think where we have it placed right now on the plans in front of you is acceptable.
And it will be enclosed, whatever you're using on the outside will be compatible, one of the materials that are already used, and you won't see through it, correct?
That is my understanding from the development team, yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Otherwise, we are looking for a motion to approve the site plan.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Butchlick and Newman. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And thanks again for coming out, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
All right. And we'll move on to E, certified survey map, number 1, CSM-21-001, a one-lot certified survey map for the redevelopment of 415 to 485 North Main Street by the District WB LLC. The applicant is some guy named Chris Schmidt of West Bend Brewery Building, and the agent is Kyle Striegens, who we just mentioned as well. Jim.
Thank you. So this certified survey map is for that 415 to 475, or actually should be 485 North Main Street. The purpose of the CSM is to combine the two existing parcels along with the vacated right-of-way of Franklin Street and also the Main Street parking lot area that is being acquired from the city. To combine this all into one property for the development of the residential development. The result of this is a 2.89 acre lot zoned MXD. The CSM does meet the requirements for the zoning district. Adequate right-of-way exists for both Main Street and Washington Street. We are asking the developer for some minor technical corrections and to identify the floodplain elevation on the CSM prior to recording. Staff would recommend approval of the CSM with the two listed conditions.
Thank you, Jim. And Commissioner Schmidt, you'll be abstaining, I imagine. Any comments, questions for Jim? Otherwise, I'll be looking for a motion for that approval.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Snarl and Dolnick. If there's no further comments, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and that passes. And moving on to F of plats. Number 1, XPP-21-001, extraterritorial preliminary plat for Green Acres Subdivision, a 14-lot and 1 outlot single-family residential subdivision located southwest of Wallace Lake Road and North Trenton Road, southeast quarters, section 6, T11N R20E by DAM Properties LLC. The applicant is Dwayne Woolner of those properties, and the agent is Jacob Rosbeck of Quam Engineering. Jim.
Thank you. This 14-lot extraterritorial preliminary plat for Green Acres is located approximately three-quarters of a mile just north of the city. The 18.8-acre subdivision is within the city sanitary sewer service area at the far northeast corner of our area, and is also within our city's 2020 comprehensive planning area. The comp plan identifies this area as commercial and single family. This is a slight variation from the comprehensive plan, but given the land use that surrounds this and a portion of it also being single family, staff did not object to the single family land use as an alternative use for this area. 66 feet of right-of-way exists for both Wallace Lake Road and for North Trenton. A 17-foot right-of-way reservation is being provided for both Wallace Lake and Trenton Road in accordance with the city's official map. The plat also identifies various environmental districts and also the A&R pipeline easement through this property. Staff would recommend approval of the plat with or as presented.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions for him? Seeing none, we're looking for approval of the plat.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Schmidt and Gannon. If there's no questions, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and that passes. And then our final item is G, discussion items. Number 1, discussion and possible recommendations regarding changing the requirements on the sign ordinance and certificate of occupancy by the Department of Development for the city of West Bend, and the applicant and agent are us. I don't know if Jim or Mark wants to take that. Are you going to start us off?
I can wrap this one up. So throughout the years, development has been tracking various inquiries and requests pertaining to sign requirements that we've had under the urban design section of 1747, and then also the sign code under 17.48. So we've been encountering some conflicts, and then the other thing is conflicts with the zoning code pertaining to occupancies for single-family and two-family developments for the requirements of the construction during the off seasons with the winter weather. So prior to staff making any kind of changes to any section in the code here for signage and then also for the occupancy requirements, staff wanted to receive some direction from the plan commission, or if there was other areas that the commission should, or I should say that planning staff should take a look at that the commission has concerns with pertaining to signage. More importantly for this, the main discussion on it. Staff did recommend a couple of sections that we have pertaining to the number of ground signs, also pertaining to the number of wall signs under the urban design section. And then also the other one is the changeable message centers that we have on our electronic message signs. So whether to adjust the size for that or to or what direction to take with the signage requirements. The last item that we have that we're asking for consideration also is that we've noticed some conflicts with the code in regards to occupancy for 1 and 2 family houses. The way the zoning code reads is that we are required to have all improvements done for a house. The biggest sticking point that we're having right now is in fall and winter occupancies, is that due to the time of the season and the construction constraints, the driveways can't be completed prior to occupancy because of the frozen conditions. So what we're asking the commission to do is to allow us to look at that portion of the code and to provide some authorization to modify that code section to provide some discretion for occupancies, issuing occupancies for the 1 and 2 families during that construction season. It doesn't affect the commercial and industrial and the planned unit developments that much because we already have provisions in the code for that, for getting sureties or for providing deadlines for that. So tonight we're just asking the commission for some discussion on what directions or if there's any specific things that we should take a look at in the code for signs and then also for the occupancy.
Thanks, Jim. Mark, did you have anything else to add?
Just on the occupancy for the single and 2 families, we're somewhat restricted by recent court actions and statutory changes. We used to be able to say you can't have occupancy of the building until you provided the parking as our code requires it. That's what the driveway is under our code. It's not the access, it's the parking need. And since we can no longer do that, the alternative is going for things like a surety. Well, to impart sureties becomes complicated because in some cases the builder, we're holding up building occupancy on a builder who has got a contractual obligation, but the driveway is not constructed by the builder. It may be constructed by the homeowner subsequent to it. So what we're looking to do is to be able to create, as a condition of the permit, most likely, that we would, if they complete their home during a certain period, the winter months where we can't get curb cuts, we can't get concrete pours, or asphalt plants are closed, we would give them the flexibility to have it done by a specific date after the season starts. We're trying to be reasonable about this without putting a bigger burden on a homeowner is trying to get in, and we're going to ask for $4,000, $5,000 worth of surety. It's not a good mechanism for us. So we'd like to be able to write into the code some of the same type of thing that we've got for the authority that we have under site plans.
So to summarize, you're looking for us to make your lives easier a little bit?
Everybody's actually. Thank you.
Yeah.
As to the signage, if you want, we can make some recommendations to you for what we think would be reasonable, but we didn't want to presume that at this point. But if you want to hear our thoughts, we'll be happy to run down some of that as well. But we'd rather hear yours. And I apologize for including the EMC size discussion. I know you've made yourself very clear to us in the last 2 or 3 exception requests that you liked seeing the signage come back if it's oversized. Our only point is we'd be remiss offering you the opportunity to discuss that size limit as to where it becomes an exception, because what we're seeing is we're bringing almost all of the EMCs to you because the threshold that we're using right now was probably appropriate back when a 16 square foot EMC was a fortune. They've come down in price. The typicals for them are a lot larger than 16 square foot, as Jim has expressed in the past. They're around 24 square feet is typical now, and we have not turned one down. So by going through this, we are weakening our enforcement, and we could be putting ourselves at risk regarding a challenge to our code.
So beyond streamlining, when you and I talked, Mark, we had talked about looking at what are the industry standards now for signage and, other communities, what they were doing. So I imagine when you go through this process, you'll be looking at that as well.
Yeah, and we have in the past, when we brought it to you before, we had done that before.
Yeah.
We revisited those codes before we did this memo, and it's virtually unchanged from our analysis that we had done previously about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And again, 16 square foot is a very small EMC in today's world. The net effect of it is the signage overall signage is still limited to the ground sign maximum. So you're not going to get anything super huge. It's just that portion of the sign that's actually changeable would be allowed to be increased. So, and again, it's up to you. If you want to continue to see all of them, I would keep it at 16, but if you only want to look at what's out of the norm for what you've already approved, I would suggest increasing it to, say, in the mid-20s.
The ratio for the sign size is based on the size of the lot or the linear footage of the property?
Neither. Right now, it's a hard-coded size.
But for me, sometimes when I look at those sign requests, it's the linear footage of the street. I mean, for a huge sign on a property that doesn't take that much street frontage, it feels oversized.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe it's more of a ratio type?
It can be a ratio. It can be tied to frontage. It can be tied to distance from the street. It can be tied to building size, as some building signs are. There's a bunch of parameters that can be used, and communities are pretty innovative on how they've done it in the past. Simpler is better in trying to explain it to people. Hard-coded, we've had no problems, and we've had not a lot of argument on the maximum sizes that we're allowed. And that triggers, if they do have a reason for it, it triggers your review of those things and considering those type of conditions. And if you want us to consider putting some parameters in for exceptions, we can do that as well. So it's up to you, but you can make the hard-coded one, hard fixed size, whatever you'd like to. If you want to have it more flexible, that's fine. If you want to keep a hard-coded size, I don't think our signage, Jim, you can jump in here, you do more reviews of these, but I don't believe we get a lot of requests for oversized except for very large parcels.
Correct. Yeah.
Or setback areas.
Right. If it's a unique setback, the biggest ones are really, as you say, the oversized ones that we've done have always been, for the most part, the big box commercial stuff. Fleet Farm, Menards,
Meijer.
Home Depot, Walmart.
Meijer.
Myers, I mean, they've all had unique circumstances where the buildings are located, where the signs are located. There's always been some kind of a unique circumstance with it, based on the, location of the building, the location of the sign, the distances for vision and stuff like that.
If you have any suggestions tonight, we'd welcome the discussion. If you want to think about it some more and just kick us an email regarding it, we'll start putting together. If you can tell us tonight, we'll try to incorporate that into our suggested text for you to review the next time, or give you options if you want. Or otherwise, we can just try to fashion what we think might be more practical, and then you can go off of that to make a suggestion. This is going to have to go, since it's a code revision, we'll have to write it, we'll have to do a public hearing, and we'll have to then take action by here and by council before this is. So it'll take probably a 2-month process.
Commissioner Fleischman, do you mind talking into the mic so we can hear you?
So for me, it's about aesthetics, right? And it's not necessarily the size of the sign, but it's the proportionality to the parcel, and it's also what's happening on the sign. I think in past years we've talked about communities that have very busy, flashing, aesthetically busy streets with things flashing on them too. So that's kind of part of it. I don't know if it's necessarily the size that's as much of an issue. Are we in charge of the code for like how often it's flashing? And as I recall, we are, right? Is that all written into the same thing?
We actually have those restrictions in our code right now. Mm-hmm. Frequency of flashing, changeable, how fast messages can change, and certain other type of issues. We had one where they happened to be using a color that blended super with the red stoplight that it was the backlight for. And it caused, and we worked with them to, change both the position and the, make sure it wasn't flashing, so that you were taking out the signal, the visual ability for the signal. We're not proposing changes to any of that type of regulation on this. We think that works. What we're hearing is, and not so much on the EDCs, what we're hearing is the number of building signs, building mounted signs that they can have. We're relatively restrictive on that. We allow one per side with a maximum of 2 total for the building. When you end up with a building that has visibility from 3 streets, you get a request for 3 or sometimes even 4 signs. And we've had to go through that review process to make a design exception for the thing. Jim, you probably know the examples better than I do, but I think we had it for
corner of Silverbrook and Paradise, where the Dunn Brothers and Qdoba and all that are. We've done that because they've got signs on 3 sides of the building there. We've done it down by where
Verizon, you had the request for?
we had a request, but that one was
denied.
Denied, correct. We also have on Paradise in Maine where Cousins and Starbucks is. We have that one.
Commerce Bank was
Commerce
another
Bank,
one.
we had a couple. That was unique with the 2nd story level. I believe one of the hotels we had the same request for. So I mean, we have them throughout the area where we had to do exceptions because they had some unique circumstances with it, or it was previous restrictions that were in place at site plan approval.
So in all those examples that you just gave, I mean, those are examples that have passed, right, our commission.
Over time, yeah, they have been approved by the commission.
So, and I don't know your longevity with all those projects, but how many times then, was that the original proposed idea or plan by the developer? As in, did this commission really make any changes when it came, or were we just saying yes, yes, yes to every one that came?
No, most of the changes that we had, the proposals weren't brought forth in the beginning.
Okay.
Like, I would say probably for like the hotel, that one was right away. That was already done in design. I know Commerce Bank was after the tenant requested it for that. It was after they leased out their tenant space that we had the request for. But we've had a mix of both, as a part of the original development, but most of them were post-development.
Okay.
That we had.
The question I would raise is, the reason for regulation is to remove some sort of detriment that's caused by the condition. And I don't know that I can make a persuasive argument why we care when you can probably only see a sign on 2 faces of a building at a time. So how busy is it to have a third that's not visible from any given point? I'm not saying we should allow the signage to grow so big or so numerous that it causes an aesthetic issue for not only the general public but the other adjoining properties. On the flip side, more than likely the guy that would be complaining about the 3rd sign on a building probably has one on that side as well. Because if they wanted it visible from that side, so will this guy. So I'm not sure that there's a large detriment to having multiple signs on multiple building faces, as long as the total signage and each individual one is controlled for both aesthetics and other practical reasons.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the commission, but I'd be interested to see what you guys come up with and bring back to us.
Be happy to. Like I said, if you think about this, I know we threw this to you on a relatively short schedule. We wanted to get it going. If there was some preconceived, we would address those right away. But we'll develop something and bring it back to you at the earliest that we can.
And let's go back to the driveway. I would be a fan of, they don't have to have it done. If it's during the middle of winter, you just can't put it in. I mean, to hold up the builder, a person moving in for 3 months because you can't get blacktop or cement, I mean, I think we gotta work with people like that,
Yeah.
right? And people are building more during the winter now. You drive around town, it's crazy to see it. So I think that just holds back some people. You know, the couple times it happens a year, I think we have to work with them.
I do have a question about the driveways. So Mark, you're only looking at the portion of the driveway that is on the property. You're not looking at the actual access, the approach that would be within the right-of-way. Is that correct? Or
It's a good question. I'll ask you that, because if they can't do their curb cut, they're not going to have a driveway, period. If they have the curb cut, that was cut in advance, but the house isn't finished and they don't have the pavement in place, do you have an issue with a temporary apron to get into their site?
Okay,
And I don't
so-
know what the temporary apron is, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, I was just asking to see where your head was at, because I think we're going to have to work together on that to kind of tie this together. I don't know if we can tie it together in the same text of law or whatever, but as at least in practicality, because those two are kind of governed by two different portions of the codes, and I want to make sure that they're going to be in sync, especially because a lot of times the portion that is on the private property is asphalt, and the portion that is in the right-of-way is concrete. And then we're chasing two contractors, and properties might get in compliance with the building inspection portion, and then not in with the portion that is in the right of way. And I kind of want to make sure that we get both compliances at the same time, or at least very close. So I guess we can talk at staff level on how to make sure it's a little synchronized when it does happen.
Yeah, and there's timing issues on all of this. For example, if it's the developer putting in the drive aprons, or that it's part of the development, then the curb cut is already there. That's a different issue than a guy putting in a brand new driveway or expanding an existing driveway. So all this is, we'll have to go through the procedures and see what we can do, but I think we need to find a way to coordinate it, because the last thing I want to do is go through the road of a surety protection. I want to be able to codify this so that it's clear to everybody right away, and we don't have any question. Because the worst part of this is trying to, on staff, trying to answer each individual needs. And one will say, I'll do a temporary asphalt on a portion of it. The other one will insist, I only want to do gravel and the rest of it. So we want to set this in the code. So we can work with you on that part of it.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Newman?
The curb would have to be cut before occupancy, I would imagine, right? You're not gonna have stone in the road to jump the curb.
Well, they wouldn't probably jump the curb. We wouldn't allow that type of condition. But if you're giving them the ability to say you're not going to do your driveway for, say, 3 months because of the time of year, they finish their construction in January and the asphalt plants don't open up until April or almost into May at times. You're basically saying they don't have to have on-site parking, contrary to the code. That's why we're modifying this. And if you're saying that, then they're dependent upon street parking, if it's available. So like I said, sometimes they're willing to put gravel base down. Most of them do anyway. They have to have a construction access for their contractors and the rest of it type thing. But we've had numerous ones where, call it lack of good project management, but they didn't bother to call for their cutting of the curbs until Interstate Sawing, which does the vast majority of the saw cutting up here, had already closed off and wasn't accepting any more bookings for the year because they winterized their machines. So, that one, the guy's looking for occupancy, and it's going to be 6 months, 5 months before he can do what he needs to do. So.
But I would say that the preference would be to have the curb cut done, like Mark said, while they're building the building. And if we were aware of it, that's the direction we steer them into. But like Mark said, when it happened, it's because we didn't know about it, and then they started doing the work, and then now it's too late, like you said, to use the machine because winter is coming. But yeah, the preference is to have the cut done, and like Mark said, they need access for construction, so they prefer to have the curb cut.
Procedurally, I think we can short circuit some of that by simply making them aware when they're pulling their building permits, please get your driveway location cut as early as possible. If they're able to do the basement dig and the rest, they can do the curb cut for the most part. But anyway, I didn't want me to go on so long about something that's so mundane, but it needs a code revision, and we wanted you to understand why. And it's becoming an issue because it was kind of stagnant for a long time, but our building permits are going back up to the levels that we haven't seen for probably 4 to 5 years.
Which is great. Yeah, great to see. Any other comments, ideas to give them direction? All right. Well, have at it. We look forward to seeing what you bring back.
Thank you.
And with that, having no further business for the Plan Commission, I'll adjourn by the call of chair. Have a great night.